Assalamu alaikum, اسمي Elizabeth, مرحبا بكم في هذه المحاضرة. Sorry, do you need me to translate that? Hello, my name is Elizabeth. Welcome to our discussion. We are trying to demonstrate how providing information in multiple formats will not only make your digital voice heard, but louder.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Topps. I'm a UX designer and accessibility lead at Sigma. The reason that I got into accessibility was because of my little sister here, called Chloe. She's 12 years old and she has learning difficulties. So that got me into looking at cognitive impairments, and I ended up doing my dissertation on cognitive impairments as well. And since then, I've just been constantly working on accessibility and doing talks about accessibility as well.
My name's Elizabeth, for the third time, and I'm a graduate consultant at ThoughtWorks, and I did my internship on accessibility. Here is me and doing my training in India, where I actually did my first cultural boo-boo of getting the Indian flag upside down on their Independence Day. Looking a little bit more Irish there, but it worked.
So the misconception about web accessibility is that it's about people with disabilities, but how we like to look at it, myself and Elizabeth, is that it's about looking at making a website or product that's accessible on different devices, different environments, for people with different abilities, and of course different cultures as well.
So we want to really stretch the meaning of accessibility. It's not just about people with disabilities. We all have cultural expectations. How many of you knew that the language I just spoke was Arabic? How many of you understood it? It's also about your environment, knowing where your users are going to be accessing your information and how we can cater for those. Like the Kindle is great because you can read it in the sunshine and there's no glare on it. Weather conditions are still part of how and where we're accessing the information.
So me and Elizabeth are going to quickly talk about our experiences in accessibility and volunteer work that we've done and people that we've worked with as well. I've worked with an organisation in Macclesfield called Speaking Up, Speaking Out, and they aim at people with cognitive disabilities, and they have this drop-in centre, and the people at the drop-in centre put on a show for the public to go to where they created posters, so you can see these posters up here, and these posters explained how they think other people see them and how they feel kind of like restricted in certain things. So it says like things take me longer than other people, for example. And in doing this, it helps you to understand the struggles with people with impairments have, and also get to know people with impairments as well, and different struggles that they might have on websites and with your products.
So the work that I've done has been more in India. I worked with a school in Pune that were blind. They tested our pages just to show us how bad they were as well. They taught us how they use their screen readers, like the JAWS, the shortcuts, what the HTML actually brings up for them. This guy was great. He was called Shivaji Londe, he was blind, and he realized that he had just as much as an equal footing online when it came to communicating, because you can't see who you're actually talking to. They've got documentaries like Catfish who really highlight just how much you cannot see the person you're talking to. So he taught himself German online, and he now works as an online translator.
So we're going to look at how it can affect people who'll be using your website or software. When it comes to cognitive impairments, there are clinical definitions such as ADHD, autism, and learning difficulties. But another way you can look at it is looking at the functional definitions. So these up here, so things such as memory. So if someone's going through quite a long form and maybe they might struggle to remember what was previously entered, or problem solving. So again, with forms, if there's errors on the form and it doesn't explain how to resolve them different errors. And also math comprehension. So a good example of this that I saw recently was a captcha, which kind of made you do a sum to enter the form. And although some of us may be able to do that quite easily, other people may not. They may struggle to know what the answer is to that sum. So it's good to kind of look at these functional definitions, because it helps you to understand what you can do on your website more easily to improve it and improve the accessibility and usability as well.
So when we turn this around and we look at the cultural expectations, there are things like traditions and names that aren't always the same. So in India, it's customary that you don't have to have a surname, and they'll use things because on forms we make them required usually. They have to make things up, which means our data isn't accurate. They'll use like their village name or their dad's name. In China as well, their names are the opposite way around to us, so their family name is first and then their given name is second. So if you don't translate your sites, you'll probably get the names in the wrong order if you say like first name or second name. Things like language, like the beginning, it's like one of the first expectations that we have and one of the most critical ways in which we expect information. Things like location, again, it's like where you are, like up in the mountains. If you've got like a travel app, I recently had to tether in order to buy a train ticket when I was stranded in Frankfurt airport because their generous 30 minutes didn't last as long as they said it was. Measurements, again, NASA made a crucial mistake by two teams not agreeing on which unit of measurement they were going with. Someone chose the old English units and someone else chose metric. And the Mars Climate Orbiter went down further into orbit, 100 kilometers further than where it could actually function. And they lost contact with a $125 million project. So it's a little bit more serious than, yeah. Dates as well. I was fascinated to find out that in places like the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia, they're officially on the lunar calendar. And their weekends also change as well because their prayer day, like our Sunday, is on Friday. So that meant their Saturday was on our Friday, and it changed because as the business grew between the East and the West, it only meant a 3 business day overlap and they were losing a lot of money. So if you book holidays to Dubai, their weekends are on our Friday, Saturday now because it moved.
So we're going to look at what does accessibility mean to people. So one of the things it gives to people is independence. So this picture in particular, it was taken at Sigma, and we work with Go On Digital, who help different people and help elderly people to get online. And this photo in particular, she was an elderly lady who hadn't used computers like before and hadn't seen it, and Hannah was showing her the tablet and showing her that you can search for different things that she likes, and she was really interested in that and searching her own different things as well and finding things, and it can give people that independence to kind of shop online, talk to people online, and ensuring that it's an accessible website, for example, can help give them that more independence.
And it's all about equal opportunities. I mean, that's why we come to conferences and we talk to each other and we search for jobs as well. When we come and find each other, we have like similarity attraction thingamajig. But when you provide the resources and the opportunities, they will take them. They're not just sitting down crying to themselves that they have a disability. A lot of us have our own issues, whether you can see them or you can't. So when you provide the information, they will take it. It is going to be for a reason.
So we're going to look at how does inaccessibility prevent people from achieving their goals. So this is a screenshot that was taken of a very older version of Milk Round, and at that time they had these adverts around the website which also moved as well at the same time, and it's quite difficult to concentrate on what your key goal is and what you want to do around the site when there's loads of things kind of going on at that same time.
But then don't be fooled, like when we look at things like the Eastern web design things, we often see a lot of clutter. This seems to work for them. However, there are reasons as to why we think that it's cluttered. There's no concept in Japanese or Chinese characters for capital letters. There's no letter spacing. So to us, because we don't understand it, it's overwhelming and all we see is clutter. So again, you have to research your target audience and keep it consistent with what they know and what they like, whether it works for us or not.
Another thing I want to mention is ensuring that you use sufficient colour contrast. So you can see on this website in particular, there's like dark grey and then a lighter grey over the top for the footer. So it's quite difficult for people to read, and this can be difficult for people with colour blindness or low vision and dyslexia as well.
It's also depressing to see that popular design choices of something that's accepted as widely as like things like flat UI, their color palettes are not even accessible. So it's widely spread, unfortunately, and like you said, it was still misunderstood a lot of the time. So even if you are choosing something that's a framework or like your company branding, it still needs to be checked from the early days to prevent this.
Another thing that we want to point out as well is you can see this article in particular, it's very long, it's long paragraphs throughout and quite small text as well, so that can be difficult for people with like learning difficulties, for example, to process that different information. And a way to kind of break this up would be obviously using like headings and bullet points, and it's just things like that to remember to break up the content and put it into more manageable chunks. It's also
in terms of things like culture, it's very overwhelming when you're presented with a long piece of text, and that you, especially if you don't understand it from a native point of view. Wikipedia is a great example because it offers it in so many languages, and it encourages things like headings and skip links for people who do with the screen readers. That it breaks it down. I mean, how many of you go onto a Wikipedia page and read all of it? No, I ain't got time for that. But the translating thing in browser, you can't always rely on automatic things like YouTube captions and translating in browser. You probably can't see it on this, but it's selling things like dolls and pumps next to each other. Not entirely sure what sort of pumps they are, but I'm not buying either one of them. I'm not entirely sure what a name seal is as well, and why you can buy a New Balance. But you can, again, these are tools that you cannot rely on all of the time. So again, Wikipedia is like a great example of that. And yeah. So we're going to be looking at how accessibility can be a key focus and some things that you can really take away in your project. We're going to focus on things like user research and personas.
And also design, media, and a bit of development as well. So one of the things that you can do, especially in user research, is to ensure that you recruit a diverse range of people for your research. This includes a variety of cultures and a variety of abilities as well. So this picture that we have here was again from the Sigma Go on Digital sessions, where we kind of help people to get online. But another thing that we do is we kind of work with these different organisations, and you can work with different schools and councils, for example, to try and recruit a number of different people and different abilities and different cultures for your like user interviews, user surveys, and user testing as well.
This is a picture again from my training in ThoughtWorks, and the one thing I want to highlight is recruiting diverse people within your companies. Diverse people create diverse conversations, and again that reflects in our software. In a group of like 6 people, we had about 7-8 different nationalities and different ways of thinking. And it was then that was brought to our attention that UK is actually only one of 11 countries in the world that has letters in our postcodes. And yet, being UK, I did not see that as being something special. That is an assumption that I had, and that everybody else then had to cater for me. And suddenly I was the one who was looked at like I was some weirdo. Don't judge me.
So like I said before, ensure that you recruit a diverse range of people for user research, but also for user testing as well. And things that you can do to aid user testing are things like make sure that you choose an accessible location, ensure that you provide the option to travel to their location. The user may have their own assistive technology, such as screen readers on their like desktop computers or on the mobile phones. So ask if they want to use their own technology and devices. Allow the participants as well to become familiar with the user testing setup before the session. So one of the things that me and Elizabeth have done for this is we've looked at, created short examples of people that we know and kind of created a sort of persona, but a very short persona. Obviously, it'd be a lot more in depth if you're making a persona for a client. And this persona in particular, I've used my younger sister again and kind of looked at the different areas that she may struggle with when she's using a website because she has learning difficulties, and kind of looked at what the solutions could be as well. And it's just to kind of point out again that to include people with a variety of abilities and different cultures in your personas as well that you give to clients.
The persona that I looked at was my dad. So his full name is Leonardo Manuel Madeira Pereira. And he doesn't have so much a problem with that in Portugal, but if he comes over to like England, he couldn't use like the mobile network 3 because they have a 30-character limit on their input field. No idea why, but it prevents people from putting in their full name. This doesn't really pose a problem until you get to things like payment gateways where you're asking for your full name that matches your card and then you can't fit it in, which means you can't pay for things, which means your client's losing money. And it's just the same simple thing, and it's usually the first field that you have to fill out, your name. Things like postcodes as well, his doesn't have letters. He's also, in terms of location, he's right at the bottom of Portugal. He's only just joined the 21st century of having Wi-Fi. So his name as well also has 2 surnames, and in Latin backgrounds they don't really have double-barreled names. They have to be searchable in things like schools and hospital systems where it has to be searchable by both names, not just one. And even over here in the UK, I have a special colleague whose full name is Adam Joshua Charles Newell Fahy. Can you imagine fitting that into one field with a 30-character limit? I think not. When I approached 3 of this, they were not amused. Like, oh, we have no issues. Yeah, anyway.
So around 2.7 million people in the UK are colourblind. So one of the things that you should really concentrate on when you're creating websites and products, things like that, is making sure that you have high colour contrast. And a good tool that you can use for this, if you're making designs on Photoshop especially, is the Colour Contrast Analyzer from Percelio Group. And you can download this onto your Mac or Windows computer. And you can use the colour droppers to select the different colours and see if it passes the accessibility guidelines, but then also choose different colours to see what colours you could use to make it accessible.
Looking at a little bit more of the development side, in terms of like HTML and stuff like that, we have to use the code properly in order to create a clear visual hierarchy. This also helps in terms of maintainability, in terms of the code, getting new people on board in your project and then carrying that on forward. It also helps in terms of like people with blindness and the screen readers actually use the structure of the HTML. I've seen on our own website where we've had a paragraph with a header in the middle of it with another paragraph because it looks good. That doesn't help anybody. In terms of cognitive issues as well, it shows the breakdown hierarchy, and it's just like the normal process that we go through when we buy things on things like Amazon. We have like the breadcrumbs navigation where we can show where we are, where we've been, where we're going to go, and it just breaks it down and makes it seem like it's quicker. It might not even be quicker, but it helps to trick that.
So one of the things I mentioned earlier with functional definitions was problem solving, and that issue can especially occur when there's different errors on a form, but it doesn't explain to you how you can resolve that issue. So you can see here we've got positive error feedback, but also you've got the negative error feedback, and it tells you how you can resolve the error. So it says, please add an @ symbol, for example. And also, on the side over there, you can see that you've got links to the different errors, and this can help when you're using a screen reader, because you can select one of those errors and it takes you straight to the form input and allows you to resolve that error as well.
So going back to the idea of adding things like captions, this helps a lot of things, and there is a very much an overlap between accessibility and usability. They're known for helping those with audio impairments, but it's a lot cheaper to provide captions in different languages than it is to refilm every one of your videos in multiple languages. It also helps you to not annoy everybody else. If you're on a train doing like client research, all you have is the videos from your marketing team, and you're on a train and don't have any headphones. So you can turn off your laptop sound and you can still access the same information. Again, that's in terms of like environment and the location where your users are as well. For those with cognitive impairments, things like ADHD and autism, they can get very overwhelmed, and it depends, again, on your material. They can turn off the audio and they can enjoy the information in a different way. Again, we have different expectations and it helps. However, if you do have strong accents and you're going for like the cheaper option of automatic captioning, please test them. Our own videos have a few issues because we are very diverse, but we have very diverse accents, which means it doesn't always pick it up. and we are currently swearing at our users, so please test them, and we, because it really doesn't understand Indian accents. I'm sorry.
So one of the things that can happen on websites, if jargon is used or metaphors are used, it can be difficult for people with like learning difficulties to understand what that may mean. But also, jargon can get lost when using the translation tools as well on like browsers and things like that. And one of the ways that you can make sure that you test your readability on your website is by using, these are just two tools that you can use. There's Readable, which gives you like a grade of what your website gets when you put in the code, and it tells you how to improve the readability on your site as well. And then there's Hemingway, which is a personal favourite because it highlights where it may not understand what your text means or where you could improve a sentence of text. So it helps you to improve that text straight away as well.
There are also things out there to really help accessibility in terms of coding and going back to the development things. ARIA tags are great because it can assign a role to things to give the screen reader a meaning of what it's expecting as well. So like a text field, is it asking me for an email address? Is it asking me for a phone number or a name? But I recently went to a conference in Belgium, and a blind guy had to point out that it is not magical accessible fairy dust that you can sprinkle on your components. It does not change the behavior of them. So if you cannot tab onto a radio button, an area role is not really going to help with that. The tab index tag is, but it's not something that you can just stick in there and say you're accessible without doing any user testing. At the end of the day, you can put as much as this as you want into it, but if it can't be used by a user, it's not accessible.
So we're going to look at how me and Elizabeth are driving accessibility forward, and also quick ways that you can drive accessibility forward in your teams as well. One of the things that we're working on at the moment, if anyone is interested, is setting up accessibility meetups in Manchester. So if anyone wants to speak at them, or if anyone wants to get involved, just get in touch with us. Our details will be at the end of this presentation. Another personal project of mine in the far, far future is creating a book about cognitive impairment and how we can improve our websites and products for people with cognitive impairments. And the reason for this is when I was doing my dissertation, there wasn't a lot of resources and books around cognitive impairments and how we can improve sites in different ways as well.
At the moment, I'm trying to build my own online blog as well to share the new research and stuff in accessibility. And I want to go on to then do a master's in human-to-computer interaction to further that.
Yep, so one of the ways in which you can get your teams on board with accessibility or get chatting about it more than you currently are is by using these cards, which are quite difficult to see actually in here, but they're called attitude adjusters and they're by Digital Pulse. And there's a link, I think, at the end of this if you want to use these. And you can print them out and cut them out and kind of get your team together and use the cards as like conversation starters about different areas of accessibility and how you can integrate it into your team as well. Another thing is getting your clients on board. If they are willing to invest, I mean, they will do, but they need to see the value of that. So over 11 million people have a disability in the UK, and their spending power is in excess of 100 billion. That's a lot of money that they want to be spending, and that your client wants them to be spending on them. In terms of things like cultural, 13% of the population are immigrants. That's, again, in places like Australia, where the population is like a third of the UK with only 23 million, their immigration is a lot higher than somewhere like the UK is. So it becomes more important in that sense of like providing it in different languages, especially when they're coming up from like an Asian background. 18% of Europe speak German natively, as opposed to most people think that most people speak English, which is true to a conversational level, but not actually natively. And you're going to reach a lot more people more personally when you are speaking to them in their native tongue. The extra effort is nice, and it builds that trust between you and your brand. Another tool which I used during my internship, this is actually a really good one, and it's free. It's called Pally, and it shows that accessibility is not just a one-off thing. You can't
Most of the tools are just, you put in your link, and it gives you all the errors, and you fix your errors, and then you think it's done, and it's accessible, and it's really not. The same with like security, it is continuous. So this is Pally, and you put in different links. So we have like About Us page and careers. It's really nice that it doesn't spider through everything and then overwhelm you with like so many errors. And it shows you graphs to see how well you're progressing. So it's really good for your team in terms of morale as well, to show that you are making a difference. A lot of it is a little bit of like monkey work with the alt tags and the color contrast, but it's a nice place to start, and it's free, and it's nice and continuous.
Yep, so thanks for listening to us today. If you want to get in touch with us about the accessibility meetups or about accessibility in general, please get in touch with us. We've got our emails and Twitter here. And yeah, thanks for listening.